Malik's First Job, Financial Principles for Teens, is an excellent resource to get your children started on understanding the basics of financial literacy. This book, which is set in Brownville, Brooklyn, about a young man who gets his first job and then shortly thereafter sits down with his dad to learn how to manage his money. There are several topics that are covered within this work, such as paying yourself first, disciplining your spending, knowing the difference between an asset and a liability, creating multiple sources of income, as well as the importance of being charitable. So again, if you want to get your children started on understanding finance and becoming responsible adults, we highly recommend that you purchase the book, Malik's First Job, Financial Principles for Teens. So please visit maliksfirstjob.com to get more information. Peace.
Because we had to maintain a 3.0 GPA or we got sent home. And every semester I tried to get exactly, Kerwin, a 3.0, like not 3.1.
Right.
3.0. And so Merv, I look at his report card one day and he got a 3.6. So I pulled brother to the side like, yo, you're doing this thing all wrong. That extra 0.6, that 0.6 could have been partying, bro. Like that
Right.
0.6 could have been getting on some girls. And Merv said, yo, I just did my best. Why don't you do your best?
Wow.
I'm like, do my best. Like I ain't never heard nobody say do my best.
Yeah.
And so I started to apply myself, man. My grades.
Malik's First Job Podcast, here to answer any questions that y'all ask. Financial literacy and resources. Parents and young people becoming bosses. CEOs, future leaders, entrepreneurs. Conferences and boardrooms getting sponsors secured. If you want generational wealth, Brooklyn's own Kerwin Phillip with information to help. Malik's First Job Podcast. Malik's Podcast. Brooklyn's own Kerwin Phillip. Kerwin Phillip. Malik's First Job Podcast. Podcast. Brooklyn's own Kerwin Phillip. Generational wealth.
All right, cool. All right. Hey, greetings, everyone. How you doing? Welcome to another episode of the Malik's First Job Podcast, where we speak about leadership, entrepreneurship, and financial literacy for parents and teens. And today, I got a great guest, Mr. Allan Boomer from Momentum Advisors. Allan Boomer, he's the managing partner and chief investment officer at Momentum Advisors, and he's been in the financial industry for over 20 years and has spent the bulk of his career advising institutional clients and wealthy families. Prior to founding Momentum, Allan spent 7 years at Goldman Sachs, where he was a vice president in the firm's investment management division. While at Goldman, he managed a $450 million investment portfolio on a team that oversaw $7 billion in client assets. And Allan also began his career at Merrill Lynch in 1995. Allan holds an MBA in finance, accounting, and entrepreneurship from NYU Stern School of Business, where he was both a Robert F. Toigo Fellow and a Consortium for Graduate Study and Management Fellow. He also holds an undergraduate degree in business from Morgan State University. And in addition, Allan co-hosts a radio show on wealth building and entrepreneurship on Sirius XM called The Momentum Advisors. So I want to go ahead and thank Mr. Allan Boomer for coming on to the Malik's First Job Podcast. How you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm honored to be here, bro. I'm a huge fan, man. I'm a fan of the book, fan of the podcast, and just a fan of you, man. I love the work you're doing. I think you're doing amazing things.
Man, you're doing some great things as well. So, that's what we got to do. As coming from the national treasure, we got to keep things moving.
Absolutely, bro. Absolutely.
Yeah. So now I remember back when we was in school. Now you wasn't the big Allan Boomer that you are right now, right? So what led you on your career path in finance? Okay.
So first of all, I'm not the big Allan Boomer now, man. I'm still the same guy that used to be on the bridge, man, handing out flyers, But yeah, I got lucky, man. I was fortunate coming out of high school. There was a program called Inroads. Did you have
Okay.
Inroads? Were you in Inroads?
I believe inroads. That's funny. I often tell a story about me getting sent home from a job interview, and I believe it was an inroads interview I was going to. 'Cause I went there in jeans and a button-up shirt. The brother sent me home, told me to come back the next day to do the interview, and I never came back. I ended up getting a job someplace else.
Yeah, yep. So
Yeah.
you like me, I showed up to my interviews with two cuts in my eyebrows. You know what I'm saying? Like we didn't know any better. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? Like my dad worked at UPS for 32 years. You know what I'm saying? My mom didn't go to college. So corporate America was completely not on my radar screen. So I was working at Roy Rogers doing fast food. Young people don't even know about Roy Rogers, but that was like Roy Rogers was like the alternate to like working at McDonald's or Burger King. Like
Yeah.
I'll put it like this: like McDonald's was like being in the NBA or the NFL. So I was like in the G League. I was way down with Roy Rogers. And at Roy
Right.
Rogers, man, we made $5.05 an hour, man. I had to
Wow.
fry chicken. I had to grill the burgers, make the roast beef, and I was making $5 an hour. And I was saying to myself, man, like I really honor and respect the hard work that goes into fast food,
Oh yeah.
but like I don't want to be doing this my whole life, man. And so that's what really prompted me to want to go to college.
Hmm.
What prompted me to want to do well. And then one day there was this assembly where Inroads came and they said, look, for young, diverse students, Black, Latino students, we have an opportunity for you to have an internship in corporate America. And
Okay.
probably just like you, I said to myself, how much does it pay? And they said $8. I said, $8? Where do I sign? And
Right.
what's crazy, man, like how you said you had a horrible experience showing up not looking right. Like
Yeah.
I also wasn't looking right. And thankfully, man, they gave me a chance. I had 5 different interviews. They promised you that they would at least give you one, no more than
Mhm.
3. I bombed 4 interviews, like
Wow.
bombed. And thankfully, the fifth company was Merrill Lynch.
Okay.
Coincidentally, man, like the one I really wanted was Procter and Gamble, and if I had gotten that, who knows what I would be doing right now. But
Right.
thankfully, man, Merrill Lynch hired me. They gave me a shot. I literally started in their mailroom. Like my first internship was in the facility that printed all the client statements. Like it was literally a warehouse with big printing presses. Like that's where I started my career at Merrill Lynch. And all I cared about was that I was making $8.50 an hour. But I learned by the end of that summer, I learned what Merrill Lynch was about. Merrill Lynch
Hmm.
was about helping people to reach their financial goals. They were helping people save for retirement, put their kids through college, buy their first home. I love that. And so once I made that connection, I became all in on Wall Street.
Okay. Cool. Cool. All right. So what was like the next steps after that? So I guess you're starting at Merrill Lynch, and what came afterwards.
Yeah, so basically every summer and every winter, I'm at Morgan State University in Baltimore,
Right.
the national treasure, as you so eloquently put it.
Right.
Um, so every summer, every winter, I would come home and I would say, "Hey, do y'all have any opportunity for me?" And I would go back to Merrill Lynch. When I graduated from college, I had a chance to. By that point, I had interned for 4 years, right? And so I said,
Okay.
what kind of opportunities do you guys have for me? And they had a management training program where I could rotate through various parts of Merrill Lynch, getting leadership experience. So, like I would say within 3 months of graduating college, I had 6 people reporting to me. I was
Wow.
their supervisor, and everybody was like, way older than me. I was 22 years old. I had people in their 40s and 50s reporting to me. And
Wow.
that was a big shift, to go from being an intern to now being somebody's boss. And my employees were old enough to be my mom and dad. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And so that leadership experience at an early age, though, man, it really it gave me that desire to really want to do more.
Right.
Also going back to Morgan, man, at Morgan, man, that was like a playground for entrepreneurship.
Oh yeah.
Me and my buddies, we used to throw parties. We would throw parties. We would rent out nightclubs, get the school buses to transport the
Right.
kids to the parties.
Yeah.
I had a campus barber shop on the campus at Morgan. Um,
Okay.
we had a little. You remember they used to have this party called Get Jiggy. You remember
Oh yeah.
Get Jiggy? Okay,
Yeah. The
so
Get Jiggy party.
you probably don't realize this, but me and my boys, we got a big sheet and we hung the sheet in Blount Towers. Blount Towers is where all the that was our biggest girls dorm,
Right.
and we hung a sheet in Blount Towers. And as the girls were heading out for the evening, we said, "Hey, we got a photo booth set up for you.
Oh wow.
Why
That's
don't you get your
genius.
photos taken?" And so they got the photos taken for free. And then the next day, the next a couple days later, when they got to the cafeteria, the refectory, we had all the pictures printed out, and we
Mhm.
had printed up little sheets of paper. Hey, do you want 8x10s, 5x7s, wallet size? And now, if you want them, here goes. You see the photos. If you want them, we'll get them. We'll get them for you. And we were just
Right.
going to Walmart. We were going to Walmart to get them printed. We bought a camera for $40. We bought a
Right.
sheet for $10. And
Wow.
we estimate, man, we probably made as much money as the party promoters made by just
Wow.
doing photos. So I'm saying this. So I had entrepreneurial experience in college,
Right.
leadership experience when I graduated. And so that was kind of like the foundation for me was entrepreneurship and leadership.
Wow. Wow. So what was that experience like? I know you were saying that I guess you were supervising people that was way older than you were, right? Was it like difficult? Like, did they give you any type of pushback? Did they look at you funny, treat you funny? How was that?
Yeah,
What was that experience like?
that's a great question, man. I find, man, a lot of times the biggest war or obstacle it's in between your ears, man.
Wow.
Meaning, like, I walked into this situation exactly the way you just said. They're never gonna want to listen to me. They're kids' age. Like, I just finished college. These jokers went to college. Like, what can I? And so when I I had to do the job though. Like, I got hired to do a job, and so I
Right.
had to kind of throw all that noise in the garbage, and just walked in, and I basically said, look, what can I do to make your life better as an employee? What
Mhm.
can I do to help improve the performance of the team? And what I learned, man, is like people, they don't care what you know until they know that you care.
Wow.
And I was able to show concern for them. I was able to advocate for them, go to bat for them, have their back. You know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
so that's what got me the respect that I needed to then lead the people. And
Right.
so it was my first like week on the job. I was like a nervous wreck at home.
Hmm.
When I got there, I was all in, and I just
Okay.
felt it through, man. I really brought it back to my Morgan State experiences, man. Like when we were throwing parties, there
Hmm.
were seven of us, and not everybody was in the front. Some of us were in the back, and I thought about what did I do to motivate those people? You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
my fellow, because we had to hustle at Morgan, man. We had to, you had to promote the parties,
Right.
promote the photo booth. I even mentioned this, man. We did a bus trip to Daytona Beach for the Black College reunion, where we
Okay.
sent for 5 years. We sent three luxury, uh, 50 or 60 passenger buses, luxury buses down to Daytona Beach, Florida. You know what I'm
Wow.
saying? And we're in charge of these kids. So what I'm
Right.
saying is like when you have leadership experiences, no matter how small, like my first leadership experiences were at church, just
Okay.
being the head I used to be the Sunday school what do they call it? The superintendent of our Sunday school in church.
Okay.
So when you think back to like chances that you've ever had to lead, it's
Hmm.
preparing you for that moment.
Right. 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 So what happened after Merrill Lynch? Where did you transition after that?
Yeah, so I stayed there for 3 years, and what's crazy, man, is like I started to understand how corporate America worked. I saw that like I was making at that time like $50,000, and I said, "Man, I want to buy a house. I want to get married. I want to have a kid. I
Hmm.
want to do all of these things, and I don't think I can cover all this because my dad always raised me to basically say, look, like, don't count on your wife's money. Like if your wife works and your wife makes money, and this might sound misogynistic or old school, but this is how my pop raised me. My pop said, look, you want to be in a position where you could cover your household. You
Right.
don't want to be in a position where you need your wife's income to cover the household. And if your wife decides to work, you just stack that money, you save that money, you know.
Okay.
And so the reason my dad said this is that when my mom was pregnant with me, this is in the 70s, my mom got sick and couldn't go to work. And my dad was overextended. Like his pay
Oh, wow.
from work, it wasn't enough. Now that my mom wasn't working, my dad was at UPS as a supervisor. But on the weekends, and at night he was washing cars at a car wash. You know the guys at the
Right.
car wash. So
Yeah.
my dad was like so embarrassed. He was like, look, if my boss were to see me out here washing cars, it's going to reflect badly on me. And so my dad said to me, Allan, before you start your family, before you get married, you got to make sure you're making enough money to cover all that. Right.
Right.
And so I'm thinking to myself, how do because I started out making like 45,000, then 46,000, you know what I mean? So you're getting these little raises, but I'm like, I need to make what that guy makes. And
Right.
so I start doing the math and I'm like, I could sit here in this seat for the next 10 years and hope to double my salary, make 90 or 100,000. But
Right.
I don't want to wait 10 years to get married and have a kid and buy a house. Like I kind of want it now, I
Right
want,
now.
so I start like looking around, how can I get from first base to third base to home plate without
Right.
touching second base? Meaning like I didn't want to have to go the traditional route of working my way up, getting a 5% raise every couple years. Because during that time, man, this was the early 2000s, we were in a recession,
Yeah.
right? So they were pausing their raises. You've experienced this before, I'm
Yeah.
sure, where they're like, no hikes, no pay
Yeah.
increases. So like
Yeah.
meaning like even though you're supposed to get a raise every couple of years, I wasn't getting any raises. So I needed to figure out how can I make more money, but also how can I get closer to my dream? I really had this dream of running an investment company,
Wow.
right? And
Okay.
so I said I started doing research and I met this white guy who told me I'm leaving Merrill Lynch to go back to graduate school and I'm going full time. And when I come out, I'm gonna double or triple my pay. I'm like, what? That was the craziest thing I had ever heard because I was taught, use the tuition reimbursement at your job and let the job pay for it. And I'd already started getting an MBA while I was at Merrill Lynch. And it was a
Right.
5-year program. Merrill Lynch was going to reimburse me for all the money I put out. And this white guy was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go, I'm going to quit my job.
Okay.
I'm going to go to school for 2 years. And when I come out, I'm going to be making double or triple what I was making before.
Wow.
And I'm like, I didn't take out a spreadsheet. I start doing the math. I'm like, huh. So you go without much income for 2 years, but now you're doubling or triple. So mathematically, you come out ahead
Right.
versus, so like on one side of the spreadsheet is 5% increase every couple of years. On the other
Yeah.
side, it's take a couple steps back and then leapfrog. So I then met another black guy. I met a black guy who said the same thing, but what he said is that if you're black, the business schools, if you're black and if you got decent test scores and all that, the business schools are really looking for you because
Okay.
there's not enough of us who are willing to take that gamble, if you will, of going
Right.
back to business school on a full-time basis. So I put
Right.
the two things together because he said, the white guy said go to business school full-time, quit your job. The black guy said do the same thing but apply for all of these diversity fellowships.
Okay.
And so I then decided to withdraw from the part-time MBA program at Rutgers University and to
Okay.
instead apply. You mentioned the Consortium for Graduate Study and Management. You mentioned the Twigo Foundation. These are the organizations that paid for my business school. I
Okay.
applied to 7 programs. I got into 5.
Okay.
All 5 of them gave me money. And
Wow.
like I was shocked. Like one of the and I'm not bragging, man. I'm saying like one of the fellowships was so good they were going to give me full tuition and um a living expense stipend. And
Okay.
I'm like, all right, okay, I'm official. And I asked the lady, I said, how many people did I beat out for this? Like, I'm sure there were thousands of people. How many people they gave out 2 awards like that every year.
Right.
How many people do you think I beat out for it?
I say
Yes.
100.
One other person.
Wow.
People applied for full-time MBA studies at Rutgers University in 2002. I was one of them, and 2 out of 3 got a full fellowship. Once I declined it because I got into NYU and got a fellowship there, then the other person got it. So what I'm getting at is like there's so much money that is set aside for folks who are doing the work, putting themselves in the position, willing to make the bet on themselves that, you know, we got to be willing to take that step and to, you know, forego making money for a little bit to take a couple steps ahead. And I will tell you, man, not only did I make more money, like you mentioned, I went to Goldman Sachs. Like Goldman Sachs, you know, it's kind of like the, you know, I always say they're like the New England Patriots or the, you know, the New York Yankees. New York Yankees is a better, that's a more safe reference for us New Jersey, New York people. I don't like the Patriots. But you know, the Goldman Sachs like the New York Yankees of Wall Street. And when I got to Goldman, I was able to do exactly what that guy said. I tripled my income by going there.
Wow.
And I didn't have to pay for graduate school.
Okay.
So I didn't have that same equation. So I would say that was my path, man.
Wow. Wow. So then after Goldman, is that when you went and started Momentum Advisors?
Yeah. So I stayed at Goldman for 7 years, and it was crazy. I was the only Black person they hired that year in my program. My program was wealth management. Like in wealth management, they dealt with folks who had at least $10 million to invest. Opposite of how I grew up. I didn't grow up in a household where we even talked about $10 million, let alone have it. You know what I'm saying? And I was the only Black person out of 40. They hired 40 people. These were people from Harvard, from Stanford, from Wharton, from all the top business schools in the country. There were literally 30, I think it was like 33 white men, me, and like one Asian dude and like a couple of white women. Like, but it was, I was the only Black person. And at the end of 2 years, they promoted 4 out of 40 to become vice president. I was one of those 4 out of 40 and the top 10% of my class. So I did well at Goldman. As you mentioned, when you read my bio, I was managing hundreds of millions of dollars. And then one day I'm sitting at my desk and I'm watching the CEO of my company testify before Congress. And Maxine Waters said, didn't you have a fiduciary duty to do what was in the best interest of your client? Fiduciary duty means really to look out. Didn't you have an obligation to do what was in the best interest of your client? I'm expecting, I'm like, this is the good part right here, y'all. He's about to kill it. He's about to kill it. I'm expecting he's going to say yes. My CEO said no.
Wow.
I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Like people are entrusting me. Like my biggest client at that time, Kerwin, a guy sold the business to GE, to General Electric, and walked away with $330 million cash after taxes. He wired $100 million into the account that I was managing for him, and I was picking investments for him. So you mean to tell me you've entrusted me with $100 million and I don't have to act in your best interest? Like that feels right to y'all? So I quit.
Yeah.
I quit, man. I quit. And ultimately, man, I started Momentum Advisors. And I basically said, we are going to be everything that Goldman Sachs is and also everything that Goldman Sachs is not. Like we are going to be like kind of like the New York Yankees, but more diverse, right? We don't want to be that, you know, where I'm the only Black person. We want to be more diverse. And we want to work with folks that don't necessarily have $10 million. But most importantly, we want to be a fiduciary. We want to embrace this idea that there's a legal, designation that says we are required by law to act in your best interest. And that was 10 years ago, man. That was 10 years ago.
Peace, what's going on? Have you ever wanted to get involved in real estate wholesaling, but just didn't know how? Well, my good friend Chris Jefferson has a whole course that he offers that teaches you all the ins and outs of real estate wholesaling. Look below in the show notes, you'll see a link that you can click on where you can get more information about the courses in which he offers. Show you how to get started in real estate wholesaling, how to get leads, how to promote yourself online. So definitely look below in the show notes, click on the link, get more information, and learn how to build your business. All right? Take care. Peace. Peace, peace, peace. What's going on? This is Kerwin Phillip from the Malik's First Job Podcast. Just a quick reminder, hit that subscribe button below and that notification bell. That way you never miss an episode when it drops. All right? Thank you all for supporting, and let's jump back into the conversation. Peace. It's funny, I was listening to something recently where people were speaking about like 401k plans, right, at an employer that you have through your job, and that oftentimes that's not the best route to go because the people managing those portfolios, don't necessarily have to do what's in your best interest. It's exactly what you just said, right? Do you think that's, I know it's kind of going off a bit, but do you think that's do you think that's accurate to not go the 401k route and maybe invest a different way?
So Kerwin, with all due respect, I'm a straight shooter.
Right.
I've seen these videos because I watch TikTok and Reels, and I see this conversation going on, and I think it's BS. I'm going to call BS on that. The 401k is a beautiful account that everybody should have that has access to one. Everybody should be funding it. And I think it is outright, what would I call this? It's preposterous to tell someone that they should not be putting money in their 401k. Like, shame on you if you're telling someone, not you, I know you're not the one that made this up, but shame on you if you're telling people not to do it. Like, what I find is that the people who are telling you not to do it are saying, don't do that, do this. And if you do this, that's how I get paid. That's what I've been seeing. Like, if you go into the comments and you follow what are they saying next, they're saying, don't put the money in a 401k, instead put it in a whole life insurance policy. And that whole life policy is going to have a big commission to the guy that sold it to you.
Right.
A 401k, man, like, can I brag on a 401k for a minute? I know this is off topic, but you talk about a vehicle for compound interest. That's the 401k. You talk about some tax savings. You talk about like what assets can you own, Kerwin, that are 100% protected from creditors, where nobody could sue you and take your money, where you could file for bankruptcy and still walk away holding this asset when you're done. Like, you could have $1 million in debt, file bankrupt, come out, and you could still have $1 million in your 401k. Like, come on, Kerwin. Right? That you know what I'm saying? So people don't think about it that way. What people think about is, like, if you think back decades ago, remember there was Enron and WorldCom. You remember those companies? And the mistake that the leaders of those companies made is that they allowed their employees to invest their 401k dollars into company stock. Right? And then those companies turned out to be frauds.
Right.
And now people lost their retirement. So the Department of Labor has made changes. They've capped and they put limits and restrictions on your ability to buy your company stock. So now we don't expect there will be an Enron or a WorldCom. What we do expect, though, is there's going to be volatility. Like, we're seeing that right now in the market. The market's up and down. It's up and down. But if you stick with it long enough, you'll make your money back and more. So I love the 401k. I think the people that say don't invest in it, are doing it for disingenuous reasons, and shame on them.
Right. Okay, cool. So now with Momentum Advisors that you have right now, how have you grown that over the years from the time that you started?
Yeah, good question, man. So we started out in year one. I was literally in my parents' basement. I then borrowed a desk from a buddy of mine who went to NYU, and that was my first New York City office. And initially, again, me in my parents' basement, and then borrowing a desk. Today, again, we hit our 10th year anniversary this year. We have 11 employees and partners. We have 3 sister companies. So we have
Okay.
Momentum Advisors, which is wealth management, financial planning, and investments. We have Momentum Risk Management, also co-led by, or led by, I should say, my dear friend, your Morgan classmate, Sylvia Alston, who's
Hey,
doing an
what's up,
amazing
Sylvia?
job. Yeah,
Right.
Sylvia's bomb, by the way, but Sylvia's
Yeah.
practice is focusing on risk management in the
Okay.
areas of property insurance, uh, home insurance, auto insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, really any kind of asset that you have that needs protection. That's
Right.
Momentum Risk Management. And then lastly, we have a private equity vehicle as well that we created. So we've got 3 companies, 11 people. We're managing over $330 million now, which
Right.
is crazy. Would you believe it, Kerwin? We are one of the largest, if not the largest, Black-owned wealth management firm in the country.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Congratulations.
Thanks, man.
Wow. Actually telling that story, I'm thinking back to, those photos they show online of like Steve Jobs in the garage and Jeff Bezos starting off small, and they've grown their companies to where it is now. Now you have a similar story being in your parents' basement, and now you have, the big office. You have an office in Manhattan, correct?
Yeah, we got an office right by Bryant Park. We have an office
Mm-hmm.
in Somerset, New Jersey. And in
Yeah.
North
Oh,
Jersey,
both.
we have our Momentum Risk Management office.
Wow. Wow. Right. Again, congrats for the success. Right.
Thanks, man. And listen, I give it all to God, man. Like it ain't because I did something so great.
Right.
The Lord blessed me with some talent. I then mixed that talent with my own effort,
Right.
and I receive the favor of the Lord every day, man.
No doubt. No doubt. So, what advice would you give the 16-year-old version of yourself today?
Yeah, yeah. 16-year-old version of me, I would basically tell him that you should do your best at anything that you decide to do your best. And
Right.
you're gonna be like, yo, Alan, that's like crazy basic advice.
Right.
But I'm gonna tell you, man, I didn't hear that advice until I was about 20 years old.
Okay.
Because the advice that I heard before from my parents who were doing the best they could, they said, get good grades.
Okay.
Get good grades and do your best are 2 different things. Because like if you're good in school, you could get good grades without doing your best,
Right.
right? It's a
True.
big difference. And
Right.
so in college, my roommate at Morgan was Mervin Bourne. And
Okay.
Merv one day, you know, we both had scholarships at Morgan. And one day Merv said, because we had to maintain a 3.0 GPA or we got sent home. And every semester I tried to get exactly Kerwin a 3.0, like not 3.1,
Right.
point 3.0. And so Merv, I look at his report card one day and he got a 3.6. So I pulled brother to the side, like, yo, you're doing this thing all wrong. That extra point six, that point six could have been partying, bro. Like that
Right.
point six could have been getting on some girls. And Merv said, yo, I just did my best. Why
Mm.
don't you do your best? And
Wow.
I'm like, do my best. Like I ain't never heard nobody say do my best.
Yeah.
And so I started to apply myself, man. My
Mm.
grades went from 3.0 exactly to I got a 3.6 one semester. I got a 3.4, 3.5. I was able to bring my GPA up to like a 3.2 and some change,
Wow.
and that's college. But then after that, man, everything I did, I just did my best, man.
Yeah.
If it was an internship, I did my best. If it's a job, I did my best or I tried, you know what I mean? My best. Like you know what your best is. So that's
That's
the
right.
advice that I would give, man. No matter if you're taking out the trash, if your mama said make the bed, if your
Right.
pop said, you know what I'm saying, wash the dishes, just apply yourself to everything. Because
Yeah.
I'll tell you that there are opportunities for folks to apply themselves.
Yep.
Like when you hear about folks who don't have enough money to go to college, if they've got straight A's,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have enough money to go to college, somebody's going to make a way for them.
That's right.
If they got D's, if they show up late habitually, if they've
Yep.
been cut in class, you think somebody's going to make a way for them? So what I'm
Oh
saying is
no.
like you got to do your best. And I tell people all the time, like, I wasn't given like this much talent. I was given like this much,
Right.
but I'm able to compete with people that got this much because the difference between this and that is hard work. And so
That's
again,
right.
do your best, apply yourself, work hard. I think hard work is the easiest thing that you'll ever do. It's hard to have talent. It's easy to work hard. So that's the advice I would give: is do your best and work hard.
All right, cool. So recently, there's a report that came from the University of Georgia, the Seelig Center for Economic Growth,
Okay.
that speaks about the $1 trillion spending power in the Black community, right? But yet, with that increase, I think it doubled, almost doubled since from the year 2000 to 2021. But yet, the average net income in the African American household decreased by 14%, right? What does that say about the spending in the Black community?
Yeah, so for one, I know this is going to sound controversial, man. I don't always believe the surveys and the studies.
Okay.
I do think that, like when you think about history, like a lot of history, it has been written in a way to make you feel inferior. Would you agree with
Mm,
that? Like when you think about like the fact that we spend so much time studying Europe and the ancient Romans and the ancient Greeks and
okay.
so little time studying African civilizations, right? So
Right.
you get this indoctrination with this idea that we are not um, adequate,
Mm,
right? Now, look, there's a lot of problems in the Black community. I'm not saying that's not true, but I am saying so. Then they also like there's a prediction that the average Black family in America is going to have a negative net worth at
right.
some point in the future, right? These reports tend to come out Black History Month time when we're
Mm,
feeling good about ourselves, right?
right.
And they try to blame us, like we're spending so much money. You glorifying Gucci belts and you know what I'm saying, Louis this and Versace that. I
Right.
just think, man, a couple things, man. Number one, I do think that people who want to build wealth have an opportunity to build wealth like never before in history of Black people in America.
Right.
I'm not saying that we've got an even playing field. I'm not saying that other people haven't had a head start, but I'm
Right.
saying like we've got such a leg up over our parents' generation who had such a leg up over their parents' generation. Right. And
Right.
so we can be that first generation in the history of our family to create wealth where our parents and our grandparents may have never had the opportunity to create wealth.
Right.
Right. Now in order to create wealth, we can't be spending everything. We've
Okay.
got to do some saving, but more important than saving is we got to do some investing.
Okay.
And like I think a lot of us have a negative relationship with investment. We don't think investment, we think gamble,
Right.
right? We don't think
Right.
gains, we think risk. Like
Right.
we don't think profit, we think loss. Right. And so
Right.
we've got to get comfortable with the idea and sort of normalize the concept of like having wealth, of having assets, of regularly putting money into an investment account and letting it grow. And if it dips a little, add some more to it. We've got to normalize these things. So going back to the study, Black people have a lot of disposable income. I
Hmm.
know for a fact a lot of Black people have a lot of wealth, and I think for those who want to create wealth, there's a huge opportunity to do so. Like when I read that stat that Black folks are going to have a negative net worth, you know what I said, Kerwin? I said, not my household.
Right.
And you can decide the same thing in your household.
Right. 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 So I guess so. What should we be doing to kind of to increase our wealth and being able to pass things down to our children? Like, what habits should we be having right now?
Got you. I think number one, we've got to separate the idea of spending from wealth and
Okay.
even income from wealth. Like wealth is when you have money that's making money. Would you
Okay.
agree with that? What
Yes.
wealth is when your money is making money, right?
Hmm.
Wealth speaks nothing to income Wealth speaks nothing to spending. Like I would argue that spending is the destruction of wealth. I would argue that income by itself is not wealth
Right.
because it's what you do with that income. So the habits that I would build is number one, get this idea of spending out of your mind. Like people often post, like I'm big on social media. People will post like, if you had $100,000 right now, what would you buy? Like, what would I buy? That's not even the right question. Like, what am I going to invest in?
Exactly.
That's the conversation we need to be having, right? So number one, separate that idea of spending and income versus wealth. Number two is embrace this idea of investing. Investing is nothing more than taking some money, mixing it with an opportunity, and then
Right.
giving it time to grow.
Right.
It's all three things. It ain't two. You can't pick and choose. It's all three. So take your money, mix it with an opportunity, give it time. That last piece of time is like the thing that's the hardest part to do, but it's the most important thing about investing is that you've got to give your investments enough time.
Right.
The next thing I would say is like, again, in order to begin to build wealth, you've got to have a foundation. Just like if you were building a house, you got to lay some concrete. You got to make sure you're on level ground. So the foundation that everyone's got to have, number one, you got to have some emergency savings. This is money that's sitting in the bank doing nothing.
Right.
When I say doing nothing, like that's what people say, like, man, it's just sitting here doing nothing. No, it's doing something. It's protecting you.
Right.
If you need to get new tires, a new roof, the boiler goes, your kids need braces. These are things that happen. As sure as I'm sitting here, I guarantee you somebody is going to have an emergency.
Yep.
And if you don't have savings, now you're starting to get into debt.
Yep.
Right? So the second thing I would say is you got to get rid of your high interest debt. And I will call high interest debt any debt where the interest rate is higher than the rate of return you're earning on your investments. So if you're getting in your 401k 7-8% return, but you got a credit card where your your interest rate is 12% or 20%,
Right.
you see what I'm saying? You remember that Jay-Z said hustling backwards, or was that Biggie said hustling backwards?
Hustling backwards. Yep.
You don't want to be hustling backwards, but you don't want to be making 7 and losing 20. You're
Right.
negative 13. Right. So
Yep.
you got to pay off your high interest credit card debt. The third part of the foundation, you got to be saving for retirement. Everybody that's working from the day you start working, maybe not the first day, because first day
Right.
you want to buy something for yourself, but
Right.
in your 20s, in your like the earlier you can start, the better. Even if you're in your 40s and if you haven't started, start now. You've got to normalize every day, every paycheck, every year, putting money away for retirement.
Right.
And then the final piece is like, especially if you've got kids or people who depend on you, the final piece is if you've got kids or people depending on you, you're going to need some insurance.
Yes.
That insurance protects your income, and your income really is your most valuable asset because it's the thing that's providing your ability to live and cover
Yep.
your living expenses. So those are the four things. The final piece, again, going back to investing, is like really look up the word compound interest. Like
Oh,
I don't know why, Kerwin, like they taught us about the Pythagorean theorem in high
Yep.
school. They taught us about pi. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? They taught us about um, you know, in
Sine and
calculus,
cosine and all this other
sine
stuff.
and cosine. Why didn't they talk to us about compound interest?
Yep. Yep.
Compound interest, man, Einstein said compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. People who understand it earn it.
That's right.
People who don't understand it, they pay it.
That's right.
That's wild. If you understand it, you earn it. If you don't, you pay it. So think about all the folks that are like struggling to pay credit card debt. Like that debt is destroying your wealth.
Yep.
And there's so many on TikTok and social media, so many videos of how to use credit and how to get business credit on. And these are tools of destruction, really.
Wow.
Unless you're using debt for leverage to buy assets, like you're using it to buy things that ain't worth anything, like you're destroying your wealth. So we've got to understand how compound interest works, man. Compound interest can take a little bit of money and turn it into a lot of money if you give it enough time.
That's right. That's right. You know, often when I'm doing like workshops, I like speak to kids about, you know, I give you like $1 million today, or a penny that's compounded every day for 30 days. You know,
Yeah.
and oftentimes most of the kids will pick the $1 million to have it right now. But then when I show them that penny that compounds daily for 30 days, it turns like $5.3 million.
Crazy. Yeah,
You know, they're like, wow. And that's when I go into the whole conversation about compound interest and having your money double. So definitely that's a key, important key to building wealth. All right. So I know you're a busy man. I don't want to hold you up too much longer, but I want to thank you for coming on the program today. And for anyone that wants to reach out to you, where can we find you?
First of all, man, I want to say thank you for having me, man. I think you got an amazing platform. You've got an amazing book. I bought the book. I got the book. I'm sharing the book with my kids and anybody who'll listen, man. I just think what you're doing is so valuable. I follow you, man. I see that you're showing up in a lot of places having conversations that need to be had, and they need to be had by people that look like us. And I appreciate you for that, brother. So our website is momentum-advisors.com. I'll say that again. It's momentum-advisors.com. Our Twitter page is @momentumadvice. And our podcast is now on Spotify and all the different podcasting platforms. It's called the Momentum Advisors.
All right, cool. So we have the link right there. And you said, what was the Twitter or the Instagram?
It's @Momentum Advice on Twitter.
Momentum Advice?
Yep, @Momentum Advice on Twitter. And I think Instagram is Momentum Advisors or the Momentum Advisors.
All right, great. All right, so definitely follow them online. Connect with my brother. You know, he's a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of insight. And again, we're all here to help us grow and build wealth for the future. So again, thank you all for checking out the Malik's First Job podcast, and I'll catch y'all next week. Peace.
Generational wealth.